Yeah, kicking things off this week on the SportsMax zone with football. Manchester City were confirmed over the weekend as English Premier League champions for the third consecutive season. Arsenal's 1-0 loss to Nottingham Forest on Sunday was the final nail in the coffin of their title campaign. The final feather needed in Manchester City's cap to lift the trophy for the 7th time in their history and 5th time in Guardiola's 7 seasons as manager. Arsenal spent 248 days at the top of the league, the most by any team not to have won the title. Their manager, Mikel Arteta, said it was a sad day for the Gunners.
A really sad day, a lot of difficult emotions. Obviously we lost the game, we lost the championship after 10.5 months fighting for it, 9.5 months almost on top of it. And obviously we built a lot of illusion, enthusiasm and belief that we could go all the way and win it. And at the end we fell short. First of all, congratulate Man City. They are the champions, they deserve to be the champions. They've done it for 38 games. We haven't been able to do that. And that's it. And from my side as well, apologize because we have generated that belief and that we could do it, and at the end the team wasn't able to do it, and this is my responsibility.
Mikel, can you use this hurt from today to drive you on for next season?
For sure, we will find a way to do that. Today it's just sadness, you know. You see a lot of people, they put everything, they put so much work, so much belief, so much hours, and I'm sad for them because we wanted to find a way and squeeze everything that we had in that group and find other alternatives, other ways to reach. When we don't reach to certain levels, we try to reach in other ways, you know, and we fell short, and this is my job, it's my responsibility, and I have to analyze that and think.
Meanwhile, Pep Guardiola heaped praises on Arsenal and spoke glowingly of his team's performance throughout the season.
I have all organization myself personally for the relation I have with Mikel, so incredible, big congratulations for Arsenal has done. So I think Mikel bring the team again what Arsenal was in the past, since many years being far away. Have been a quite similar battle like Liverpool in the previous seasons. So they bring us again, Arsenal bring us again to our limits. Otherwise, if we don't make this run, the 12, 13, I don't know how much, 12 games in a row winning, after making 50 points in the first leg, would have been impossible to catch them. So they lost some points, and we were there, we pushed them, and at the end, we will retain our title. So this is not more special than the other ones. Everyone it is. So it's not just the fact today. The club told me no, it's the 5th Premier League in 6 years, but we have 6 and 10, 7 and 12. So that means a little bit more than a decade. So when you are a star now, you know, and said, okay, we start the Premier League right now, in the next 12 years or even in the next 6 years, we're going to win 5. I cannot imagine. So this is what we have done. So imagine right now, start next season, the first next season, with one team, we're going to win 5 Premier Leagues. I cannot imagine, not even ourselves. So that's why I don't need, for this Milestone, we don't need, I think, 1 decade or 2 decades or 3 decades to think about how good it was. I think we had the feeling we have done something exceptional in terms of Premier League. Of course, to be considered one of the greatest teams, we have to win Europe, we have to win the Champions League. Otherwise, yeah, maybe people say, yeah, it was not complete our time here. But in the same time, if just in case we're not able to do it in number 10th against Inter, or next season we cannot do it, always it's unfair to say that what we have done with 5 Premier Leagues in the last 6 years, or 7 and 12, that is something extraordinary.
Here to discuss Arsenal season and Manchester City's glory, our European football correspondent Simon Evans, and Arsenal supporter and our in-house analyst Lejay Williams. Simon, it's good to have you back again on the SportsMax Zone. First of all, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. It's good to be back, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Let me just cut to the chase because the debate has started. Did Arsenal bottle the Premier League?
Yeah, I never really liked that phrase, a bottle, really, because I think when it happens over a period of time like that, I think, you can talk about bottle when you have a situation like City had against Real Madrid last year in the Champions League, where you're 1-0 up with 2 minutes to go and you end up losing. You can talk about bottle there and the metal and the character and stuff. But I do think there is going to be a question for Arsenal about the psychology. I don't think they choked. I think Manchester City are a better team than them. But I think the way they faded, some of those poor results in the run-in, does suggest that there's a little bit of a mental fragility there.
Yeah, let me get Lejay's take on this before I go any further, Lejay.
Yeah, to say that Arsenal battled the league is quite simply just really simplistic analysis, results-based analysis. If we're looking at it from a realistic point of view, it's very similar to what happened last season when we faded away from the top 4 race. Arsenal, what people should be looking at is the fact that we were on top for 248 days with the youngest squad in the league. I'm not going to argue with anyone who says that, okay, then we should have won certain games, the West Ham game, the Southampton game, maybe even the Liverpool game, Brighton. But it's a really simplistic way of looking at football. Because if you're going to say, okay, we should have won those games, in reality, we should beat every single team in the league except for Man City, because we're better than all of those teams. And the league table shows that. So as I said, it's a simplistic way of looking at football. I think the real danger is to actually look at what's happening here, look at the trend which Arsenal are on, being on top for 248 days in a league that contains Man City, a team that have won 5 out of the last 6 Premier Leagues, with the youngest squad in the league and the 3rd youngest manager in the league. You should be looking at a scary proposition and not trying to criticize our every move. But that's just the nature of Arsenal. It's a banter club, so people are always going to have their way. But as an Arsenal fan personally, as an objective one, I'm really calm, and I'm looking forward to what's going to come forward for the next seasons to come.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it, Lejay, and I would also say not a surprising way that you would probably look at it. And let's say I go with the argument that Arsenal didn't bottle the season, and this one to you, Simon, and I think you've hit a really good point about the psychology, because this is not the first time that we've seen Arsenal fade away at the back end of the season. And on one instance, maybe it wasn't challenging for the title, but it was challenging for a Champions League spot or whatever the case might be. But there has to be questions about their ability to remain potent for an entire campaign, and an in-depth analysis done as to why this is happening and how they fix it going forward. Because for them to win the English Premier League title, this is something that they will clearly have to fix.
Look, I think it is a young team, yeah? We do need to remember that. And that is reflected in the psychology of a team. That's reflected in the mental strength of a team, because having an experienced core of players who've won before makes such a difference during those run-ins. I mean, if you look at that Manchester City team, it's full of people who've already won the Premier League. So when they get an upset, when they get a bad result, they can bounce back from it very quickly because they've been there before, seen it happen before. They know they can come back from it. And I think what you have with Arteta's team is a young team that suddenly had this weight of expectation on them because they were top of the league, and there quite rightly was an expectation that they could go and win the Premier League. But then when things started to go wrong for them, they didn't have those characters to call back on. They didn't have some people in that dressing room who could turn around and go, this happened 3 years ago and we bounced back from it, we're good enough to deal with this situation. And maybe their squad also, I think, aside from the character, personality psychology issue of it, maybe their squad is still developing and they need maybe 2 or 3 more players in there. Maybe they can bring in some of that experience and know-how. It is a young side. They've got some fantastic players. I mean, the football we've seen this year from players like Saka and Odegaard has been fantastic. It's great for the Premier League to have a team like Arsenal doing well and have a change at the top and have a different challenger. I think we enjoyed those Manchester City-Liverpool duels, but we didn't want to see those every single year. So, I think next year is going to be really interesting. And Arsenal, but they do need to address that. They need to find, maybe bringing in a couple of really solid, experienced players to help those younger players on the field.
Yeah, I hear you, Simon, and I would want you to comment on this and Liz as well when you're through, because we understand the youthfulness of this Arsenal aggregation, but this decline toward the back end of the season has been happening for over a decade now, with squads with a lot more experience. So a lot of, well, if you want to call them detractors, are labeling Arsenal a team that just has a problem with that. So we understand the youth of this team being part of the reason why it happened to them this year, but what about previous years when they had more experience in the setup?
Yeah, I mean, you could, that's an argument to say that there's a culture problem at Arsenal, which I think...
I didn't want to say that, but you said it. Go ahead, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you say. I mean, you could say the same about their neighbours as well, Tottenham. Maybe it's a North London thing, I don't know. As a Northerner, I'd probably quite enjoy that argument. But they... no, I mean... It is a very different team. Arteta is very different from the late Wenger, Unai Emery period. It is a different culture there, I think. And I'm not sure this is a continuation of that. But there is a certain point, of certain truth there, that once you've done it, or once you've really, really gone close, you have a different culture and a different attitude. And I think Arsenal next year will come back with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder about this, to prove to people that they're not chokers, they're not bottlers, and that they have got more to themselves than what people are suggesting.
Yeah, and Liz, I'm sure you're going to agree with that last point that Simon made. But your take on what I put to Simon initially, that Arsenal has been struggling with this issue of fading toward the back end of the season, even with more experienced rosters.
Well, first of all, that's inaccurate. Arsenal don't tend to finish Premier League seasons weekly. That's really just a phenomenon under Arteta, actually, coincidentally. Our last 2 seasons under Emery, under Wenger, in his later years, we usually tended to win a lot of games towards the end. It would usually be in the middle of the season where we would crumble. So that's the first point. Second, to which Simon really hit the nail on the head. I think next season, just based on the types of players that we are even linked with at current, Declan Rice, a leader at West Ham, he's our captain. We're currently linked to Gundogan, although I'm not really fond of buying another Man City player at the current moment. Gundogan is an exceptional midfielder, one of the best in Premier League history. So it's just really nice to see the types of profiles of players that we're going for, and just trying to add more mental steel, because as you guys have pointed out, it's an extremely young squad. It's a team that also, people have to bear in mind that there is naivety from the players, but there's always going to be naivety from the manager as well. He's 3.5 years into his managerial occupation overall, so he's going to make mistakes as well, and so the entire club is going to grow as a team, as a squad, and the culture is going to continue getting better. The players are going to continue getting better, so that's something I'm expecting as well.
I hear you guys, and not to labor this Arsenal point, but I listen to you, and a lot of what I'm hearing are reasons for why Arsenal choked at the back end of this season. And I am calling it choking, and this is why. Because at the back end of the season, when things got tough, Arsenal found themselves in a winning position, and when things got tough, they were unable to execute in a manner that would push Manchester City all the way. And I'm not saying that they should have won the title, but there has to be something about the fact that they faded away so badly that Manchester City have now won the Premier League with 2 rounds, or incidentally with 3 matches remaining in the campaign. And there was a point of the season where that was almost inconceivable, that Manchester City would go on to win with 3 matches to go. And that's because Arsenal choked. And to me, I think you could have seen it from the manner they went about certain matches. You're 2-0 up against Liverpool, you draw that game. You're 2-0 up against West Ham, you end up drawing that game. You end 3-0 with Southampton, a team that's struggling to stave off relegation. And that is at a stage of the season when it became apparent that Manchester City were closing and closing fast. And to me, Arsenal buckled under that pressure before it was even applied. In fact, I would say they buckled under perceived pressure. And that is why I think a lot of individuals are saying Arsenal choked and they bottled this campaign. If they had taken the campaign to the final match of the season, or with even 2 matches to go, we would be singing a different story. So I'm sorry, Simon, I'm sorry, Lejay, but I just cannot agree with the argument that Arsenal did not choke, even to some extent.
No, I mean, look, you made some really good points then. That's a very strong argument you made. And there's no doubt that the way this season has ended raises questions, as I said, about the culture and about the psychological strength, of the mental strength of that team. But, and it would be a very different discussion about next season if they had pushed City all the way. Because what would people be saying then? Even if they finished second, they would say, this Arsenal team would have been champions in any other year against any other team, and they were so close and so on. That's not what people are saying now. And I think the acknowledgement of the fact that there is truth in what you're saying there is the fact that Arsenal need to go out and buy players, not just to make them a better footballing team, but as I was saying, they need to bring in, I think, some experienced, battle-hardened characters in there. 1 or 2. They don't need to abandon their youth policy, because that's serving them very well. Declan Rice would be a great signing, but he's not really got that. He's not won anything. So, but I would be looking around for, maybe that's why Jorginho was brought in, for example, to bring some of that into it.
I was about to ask that question. What about Jorginho? Isn't that the reason why players like him would have been brought in by Arteta?
Yeah, I think it was, and it didn't work, did it? So, did they make him? Did it work out in the right way? We don't know what's happened in the dressing room there, whether he was fully embraced by everyone and what's happened there. But I think Arsenal are on the right path. I think there are legitimate questions that they're going to have to answer. But I don't. The problem I have with choking and bottling is I think it does apply much more to individual games or situations. If you. The end of a game, you can say somebody choked or bottled.
But it can happen in a season as well, too, Simon, because the overall context of a situation, because I believe that you can choke in the overall context, because choking for me is underperforming against what you would have been doing on a normal occasion in the build-up to that. So over the course of the season, in the build-up to those 3 matches that I specifically spoke about before, the complete and utter disintegration of Arsenal by losing to Brighton 3-0 and then losing to Nottingham Forest, those 3 matches came for me at a pivotal point of the season, because it was just about that point when City were starting to apply serious pressure, and you started to get the feeling that it will be very difficult to beat this City team from here on in, and this was going to be a dogfight right to the end. And I don't think Arsenal handled that very well as a team, and I think it went against a lot of what they would have been delivering in the build-up to those performances.
But a lot of what we were delivering in those performances were down to the consistency of our squad. Once we lost a very integral cog in that in Saliba, similar to last year when we lost Partey in the running, it's always going to be affected. We had Rob Holding playing, who is not a very effective passer on the ball. Then we had Kivior playing, who, although he adds a lot of what Saliba adds in transitional defence, has a extremely heavy left-footed bias, so he was never going to help out in our transition of the ball, especially through passing. So there are excuses. As I said, I'm not going to argue with anyone who says that we did bottle it or choke it, because there are fair arguments to be made. But because I am not a results-based analyst, I am one who looks at the process. I will always be looking at what we did, what we achieved, and how we can move forward. So that's what I'm doing. And just for a little tidbit of information, the last four teams to battle the Premier League title by 8 points or more went on to win it the next season. So just put your bets in from now.
I love how Leger is finding all the positives. I wish I had more time, Leger, to take you up on a point you just made, but we have to rush out of here. Simon, we can't leave this segment without a quick word on Manchester City winning the Premier League title for a third consecutive year, 5 times now under Pep Guardiola in the 7 seasons that he's been with Manchester City.
Yeah, no, they're an incredible team, absolutely, and I'm pretty sure they're going to go on. They should win the treble now. We can talk about bottling if they don't do that, because they should beat Manchester United and win the FA Cup, and they should beat Inter Milan and win the Champions League, and I think that would reflect their status and their dominant status in English and European football this season, because adding that man there, Haaland, to the team has taken them to another level that nobody has been able to match yet this season.
Leger, Manchester City?
Yeah, this is one of the best club teams in the history of football, to be honest. One of the best in English football history as well. Pep Guardiola continues to prove himself year in, year out. Yeah, there aren't enough superlatives to really say how good this Man City team is.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, we'd have another program, I'm sure, to discuss one of the things Liz said earlier on, because we have to check the records, Liz, because even if you suggest that Arsenal have not faded towards the back end of the season, there is some evidence that there is a March-April tendency for Arsenal to get some bad results at a time when they badly need results. But I guess we'll talk about that on another show.
Yeah, and Lidge also spoke about the injuries, and therefore maybe there also needs to be a discussion as to why key Arsenal players continue to get injured at a particular time of the season. But that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day. Simon, we're out of time. Thank you very much. We'll be chatting again soon for sure.
All right, all the best.
Yeah, that's it for English Premier League segment. We take a break. Lidge isn't happy. We're all happy though. We'll go back.